Welcome to the KISC My Health radio show series on Building Fortunes Radio. KISC My Health is brought to you by the universally recognized Cranberry King, Captain Cranman, Stephen Lukawski. Over the past 30 years, Stephen has worked with North American dietary supplement companies in the nutraceutical industry. His efforts and connections generate ingredient sales through innovative delivery systems and effective marketing and brand management strategies. Today on KISC My Health, Stephen is joined by guest host Peter Mingils. Make sure you check out previous KISC My Health episodes at www.buildingfortunesradio.com or KISCMyHealth.com. Along with our marketing partners, we are here to help our customers improve their health, build their businesses, and make the world a better place. At KISC My Health, we know how much your health and your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word, tell another friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world. Now, on to our show with your hosts, Captain Cranman and Peter Mingils. Take it away, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You are listening to the KISC My Health radio show with Stephen Lukawski and a super special guest today. This is going to be one for the record books. You're going to love this. It's going to be a real treat. I like to tell people a little bit about KISC My Health when we first get started because people are wondering, where do you get that name from? So it all started a long time ago. I started Building Fortunes Radio in 2012, and one of my guest speakers was a gentleman. He was a guest host. We did radio shows with him on Friday afternoons at Eastern Time, noon, for almost a decade. His name was attorney Jim Turner. Jim Turner was a gentleman who ran an organization called Citizens for Health. Citizens.org is their domain name still. And he was an original Ralph Nader Raider. And for those people who remember Ralph Nader way back when, he's still active, he's still alive, he still does stuff, but he was way bigger, it seems, way back when. He was one of those guys that was worth knowing, and Jim Turner was one of the original Ralph Nader Raiders. Anyway, so having said that, we did a lot of radio shows on stuff related to health and consumer advocacy and government and the economy and a whole bunch of other things as well until he passed away suddenly in January of 2022. We were dealing with the pandemic, the whole vaccine thing, COVID. It was really interesting stuff. Those recordings are still there, but it left a hole in my radio show spot Friday at noon, which was totally insignificant relative to the loss of Jim Turner as a mentor, somebody I could talk to, overall really great guy. I couldn't let it go. I played radio repeats for a whole entire year asking the people over at Citizens to please find me a replacement. Now, they were worried about finding a replacement themselves, so I was patient with the process. They found me, and this is where the KISC My Health starts. They found me a gentleman. His name was James Gormley. James took over as the president of Citizens, and he was a great man as well. I didn't know who he was before, so we did a couple of radio shows, kind of get familiar with each other. And as a result of those, I really had a fondness to the things that he was talking about and working on. And then he asked me, can I have a guest? Of course, James Gormley, you can have a guest. And who's your guest? And this is where it really gets close to home as far as this radio show. He said, I'm going to interview Stephen Lukawski. And I said, okay, I don't know Stephen because I'm not from your world. He says, okay, and he's Captain Cranman. I'm like, okay, Stephen sounds like a fun guy already. The king of cranberries, they say. I like this guy. I really like this guy already. I haven't even heard from him. So we did a radio show. Of course, I was just listening because I didn't know anything about Stephen. He sprinkled in that he had a LinkedIn, so I joined his LinkedIn. And over the next about year, I was watching Stephen's posts and, determining, my social relationship with Stephen, and I'm like, this guy's a good guy. He's always promoting things positive. He's always doing some really wonderful things. He's making the world a better place. And then in August of 2024, James Gormley suddenly passed away. I was like, oh my, that was a shocker because we had like a radio show the next day, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I got to call people that may not know. So one of the first people I called was Stephen Lukawski. When I called Stephen, he already knew because he was working with James, and we said, we got to do a memorial for James Gormley. He said, absolutely. And in the process of that conversation, this is where the KISC comes in. I was telling him we were doing something with writing a book. I wanted to be on Amazon. KISC, K-I-S-C, stands for the Keep It Simple Circle. It's the stuff that I train when I was training my sales force and train my own people, work with my own head as well, avoid distractions and things like that. So my Keep It Simple Circle, he said, here's what we're going to do, Peter. We're going to run a KISC My Health radio show series. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, he said, James Gormley passed away. We're going to do something for James, of course, but I know a lot of other people that are still alive that need to have their story told. And I said, I agree with that. So you coordinate that. I'll do the stuff behind the scenes as far as the websites and all the other technical stuff. So I bought KISCMyHealth.com, KISC, myhealth.com. But for me, I said, Stephen, Keep It Simple Circle is what KISC stands for. What does KISC stand for you? Now, if you know Stephen, he's like, quick. He's like, it stands for Key Influencers Super Champions. And I said, I get it. The Captain Cranman thing, Super Champions, I love it. So we started. When we made our commercial, and by the way, the introduction that we made is the one we made really before we did our first radio show. So now I know a lot more, and we're going to be revising it for for September, because Stephen's coming out with something new. I'll let him tell you about that. But the whole thing is that Stephen's done a wonderful job with bringing on best guests, and today again is going to be one of those. I want to thank our corporate sponsors, anybody that's listened in actively or passively, and then certainly to Stephen Lukawski for doing the legwork before, after, and during these shows. And thank you, Stephen, for all the great things you've done. We've done over 100 of these so far. Some deep dives are also included. They are killer deep dives, really great. And, Stephen, you do a great job here bringing some of the best people on the planet to the KISC My Health radio show. Take it away.
Thank you, Peter. And you know what? This is Stephen Lukawski. This is Captain Cranman. I'm not a bot, all right? This is my real voice. So we will be talking about AI throughout the show. And but yes, this show, over 100 interviews so far, Peter, and we could not have done this without our sponsors, our corporate sponsors who follow our vision and our mission of giving back and helping others succeed in this world and the natural product industry and beyond. And, Heather Wayner and the Charlie's Angels over there, what great, team approach they have to everything. And they've just stepped up, and they've been really good and kind in posting people who are going to be interviewing. And they've been right there from the beginning. And Pure Brands.
Whole Foods Magazine. Whole Foods Magazine. Got to mention their name. Whole Foods Magazine.
Yep. Whole Foods Magazine. And of course, Pure Brands, the organic sweetener company, and RFI stepped up. And, we've had some really good companies, and they understand what we're trying to do here, Peter. Bringing in top guns, mavericks in the natural product industry. I call them servant leaders. They are giving hearts. They always put the needs of others first before their own. They make the sacrifices that are needed to basically separate themselves from the pack and help others along the way. And these are transformational leaders. They're game changers, history makers. They know that through passion, true grit, dedication, and anything is possible when they put their mind to it. How they do one thing is how they do everything. So they're so inspirational. They're role models for the younger generations to follow their footsteps. And I'm just so thankful that people they're taking the time to want to be mentors and help others, in the journey climbing up the ladder of life, both personally and professionally. So now our next guest is no exception. It's just I'm amazed that it took, it took a while to get him on, but only because he's been so busy doing his own thing, over the last while. And I'm so happy that he's joined us today. And before I introduce who this next guest is, I just want to share something. This person has touched my life. This person has been there 25 years ago. I'll give you a hint. It comes from the probiotic space, right? So, when probiotics, nobody knew what probiotics were. And I'll give you another hint. The Joe Bradleys of the world, the Step Change Innovations, the past sponsor that we had, Peter, right? This person has been, he's been the top gun in that company who really helped a lot of younger people have careers today and move on. And he needs to be recognized. And he's that North Star out there that shines so brightly. And whatever he touches and does, it's a game difference changer in our industry. And so without further ado, welcome Mike Bush to KISC My Health Radio.
Well, it's wonderful to be here.
and thank you, Mike, because I know that, we see each other at trade shows, and it's always passing that we have a quick hello, and I know because we're both on missions and trying to changing the world's never easy, is it? Out there.
It isn't.
But thank you for everything you've done.
And Stephen, Stephen, I only have one ongoing ask of you, and that is, I have a daughter who went to McGill, and she lives now in Toronto, and she, for some reason, is obsessed with visiting a cranberry bog. And so I hope that if all the good things that come of this talk that we're going to have, and that we can help lots and lots of people and inspire people, but I really hope it inspires you to grab my daughter and take her to a bog.
You know what we're going to do, Michael? What we're going to do, Michael, is we are going to take her and you, all right, to Wisconsin. We're going to Wisconsin. We're going to the largest growing operation in the world. All right? Did you know that Wisconsin grows over 60% of cranberry in the world?
I had no idea.
No, it's that's where we're going to take her, and we'll take her this fall, and she can see the operations over there firsthand. She can also see how they make concentrates. Yeah, we'll take her on a cran tour. All right,
it's the funniest obsession.
We're going to get both of you in the way.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. But anyway, thank you both for having me. This is great.
Yeah. We're going to make Cran America great again. All right? That's what we're going to do. With the world of cranberry. And so, yes, that's on that wish list will come true. I promise you that. So if your daughter's listening to this, it'll be our cran pleasure to go out there.
Oh, she'll be listening to
it. Great. So those out there, our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to let you know that each guest we bring on is special. You'll learn something new and exciting, innovative, and creative. You'll be inspired by their life lessons, their setbacks, their challenges, their adversity they had to overcome. And Mike Bush has been one of those, like I said before, a North Star in our industry that shines a spotlight on this world. And for those who don't know who he is, Michael is the founder of Growthways Partners and creator of Guardrailing, this framework, a strategic decision-making methodology that helps founders, executives, investors, and leadership teams build more valuable businesses while creating lives and organizations aligned with what matters most. Now, I've known Michael, like I said before, for 25 years plus. And Michael has worked alongside entrepreneurs and leadership teams to navigate growth, leadership challenges, capital raises, acquisitions, and business exits. Now, through his work at Growthways, he helps organizations identify their destination, establish the principles that guide their decisions, and create the clarity required to achieve extraordinary outcomes. The guardrailing framework emerged from Michael's observation that most businesses fail not because of bad products, inadequate funding, or poor intentions, but because of series of seemingly small decisions that gradually move them away from the desired destination. Today, the framework helps leaders improve strategic alignment, strengthen culture, accelerate growth, increase enterprise value, and create greater personal fulfillment. Now, Michael's participated in raising more than $200 million in growth capital and has been involved in mergers, acquisitions, and strategic transactions, representing more than $325 million in enterprise value. His experience spans entrepreneurial startups, venture-backed businesses, private-backed equity organizations, and founder-led companies across the healthcare, biotechnology, consumer products, nutrition, and technology. Prior to founding Growthways, Michael served as president and CEO of Gatodin, helping transform the company from an emerging biotechnology business into a global market leader whose products reached more than 65 countries and over 1,000 consumer products before its acquisition by Carey Group. Today, Michael advises founders, CEOs, boards, investors, and leadership teams on growth strategy, commercialization, organizational development, leadership effectiveness, succession planning, and exit readiness. His clients seek him out not only for his business expertise, but for his ability to connect strategic decisions with long-term purpose and fulfillment. Well, I didn't know you were an author of Guardrailing. So, Michael, we got to talk. Yeah, we got to get a book. We got to let people know how they can find this book. And I know you're a sought-after speaker.
Tell me when you're ready, and what I will do is I will send you a link that you can add to the show notes. And for the first 25 people that want the link, we'll get a free Audible copy of the book. It's available on audible.com. It's available via Kindle or paperback through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all that kind of stuff. But I'll send you a link so that the first 25 people that want to download the audiobook can have it for free. Okay, there we go. Peter, we'll have to figure that part out and how we can do that. But I think what you're offering is thank you so much. It's very touching. And, or your listeners can just drop us a note at Growthways. Just go to the website growthways.com and send us a note. Say they heard it on the show, and we will send them the link to a free copy. Yeah, it's Growthways. What a beautiful name that is. It reminds me of the community churches that in Florida. That I've been attending in the past. And, how'd you come up with the name Growthway? It's funny. Back before I was with Ganeden, I'd done a turnaround and kind of was tired and decided I was going to do some consulting. And I had a company called Growth Factor. And it was kind of like, because I've always been involved in seeing the growth opportunities in companies, kind of seeing through the trees. And so Growth Factor I liked, and I like the growth aspect because I personally look at myself as I'm sure you're familiar with the Carol Dweck, the growth versus fixed mindset. I've been obsessed with it my entire adult life. And I just kind of look at it like if you're not growing, you're shriveling. And so we want to help people, find ways to grow, to not only as a business, but we want to make sure that we're working with folks holistically so that when we're working with folks, we're not only talking about, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but, not only that they're growing their business and growing their profit and growing their footprint and growing the value, because most of the companies we work with are investor-backed or, they at some point want to, have transact the business. They want to exit or something. And, it's all about value. And there's so many more things, when people think about growth, they think revenue from, 1 million to 10 million. But, a lot of the growth that goes along the way is do you have a team of people around you that are growing personally and professionally? So because we want to make sure that we can help people, especially founders and entrepreneurs and investor-backed companies, that they can grow without leaving the wreckage behind that unfortunately I have, while I was learning. And so, it's like, how do we keep people so that they can be an effective leader while at the same time being an effective father, an effective husband, an effective community member, and and all those kind of things. And so we really focus, on the business aspect of it, but also we want to help people at the end of the day become better, more driven, ethical members of society. Yeah, and create better lives for. Yes. Yeah. And so, okay, so tell me the mantra of Growthways then. Well, so Growthways is exactly as you described it. So Growthways is an organization where we focus primarily on doing workshops with companies to help them And when we do it very, very quickly, I just got off of a meeting where we're doing a Growthways, a guardrail, and we call them guardrailing workshops because my book is called Guardrailing. But guardrailing is a framework that I built over the many, many years of lots and lots of failures, trying this and it didn't work. And we're like, okay, let's not do that again. And so, but through guardrailing, it gives us a framework that we work with at Growthways, where we work with companies. We can come in and very quickly assess their business. So we've built some really interesting systems where we can assimilate all of the data in a company. And 9 times out of 10, when we start our workshops, we'll have people say, wow, we didn't know that about our business, or we didn't know this about our business. And we also look at the people in the business and how, they are aligned with the mission and vision of the business. And so, but Growthways, we focus primarily on workshopping things out so that, and if you read the book, we start with the destination first. And because, 95% of the companies we work with are investor-backed, or their goal is to ultimately, whether it's investors or they bootstrapped it and it's self-funded, but they ultimately want to exit the business because they know that there's going to become a point where, one, they'd like to have a financial, success, but also they want to see the business survive after them. And so the guardrailing workshops that we do, we come in, we do a full assessment, and then it's very interactive. It's a day or 2 days where we sit down with the folks. Sometimes it's just the founders. Sometimes it's the management team and the founders, the CEO, the management team, and sometimes they'll even bring in their investors. And we make sure that there's full alignment on the priorities, but we always start with the destination. And when I say destination, I'm very clear. It is, we say, to whom and when and for how much specifically are you going to exit this business? What is the destination? And so then we build a decision-making process that helps them not do anything stupid along the way that could potentially decrease that value to everybody. And when I talk about stakeholders, it's not about just building value for the founder or the investors. It's also about how do we build long-term value for the team that you've built, your suppliers, for your consumers. I want to make sure that, for example, when we sold Ganeden, every single person in the company got some sort of transaction bonus or had equity in the business. So when the business sold, everyone benefited. And a lot of companies, the way it works is you sell the company and the CEO and a couple of people in the management team make a bunch of money and they ride off into the sunset, and a whole bunch of people are left in their wake. They lose their jobs. The company that bought the business, they realize after the fact that it was maybe very overly founder oriented and it doesn't run well on its own. So we put plans together to make sure that none of those things happen. And so our goal is to make the world a better place all around for everybody by, the tool that I use is through helping people build value in their businesses so that everyone benefits. And we look at every decision and we say, does this get us closer to our destination and does everyone benefit? And if the answer to that is ever even remotely no, we decide we're never going to do that. And so it's really, really fun to walk into a business, spend a day with them. And like I said, they don't even take notes. We handle everything. And so, and at the end of it, we give them a full dump on what we talked about, as well as recommendations for, whether it's a 90-day plan or a plan all the way to the exit. And, and also we have rules for them. We say, these are the rules that you've all agreed on, and this is the way you're going to make decisions. And, I could give you example after example of decisions that have saved, literally hundreds of millions of dollars for companies because they were heading in one direction, and they were able to, through workshopping it out, they were able to decide, well, no, that doesn't, because if you know who you're going to sell to, you can very clearly go, oh, well, we don't need to do that because they already have that. And it doesn't add value for us to, for example, build a manufacturing facility that would make us feel, make our egos feel good because we have a manufacturing facility. But, our potential acquirers already have one. They don't need another one. So it's just going to discount the price because they're going to have an asset that they don't want. And so it's really fun to be able to help people really see clearly what their business is, their business trajectory, and everything else around it.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, the guardrailing, how it differs in a strategy when it's a family-owned business versus, corporate, and where there's no family involved. Have you worked with any family businesses?
Yeah, because sometimes the family-owned business is, okay, we have this business, and, the next generation has all these great ideas of the way they're going to blow this thing up. And so say you have a relatively successful business doing, a profitable business doing $25 million or $50 million in revenue, and it's supporting the family, and it's building, building wealth for the family. But how do they move this to the next generation of people? And you may have, for example, there's a firm we're working with. The father is the CEO and he runs the show, but he's at the end of his career and he wants to have his kids begin running the business. But the kids have some ideas that they think are just fabulous. And so we kind of workshop through this, and what we found was, that some of these ideas are kind of flyers that aren't vetted or aren't well thought of, but it's the kids trying to, kind of be like put a stake in the ground and say, we're going to make this different. And so sometimes what it helps them do is realize that if the goal is to have a multi-generational wealth built in the business, or a business that can be supportive to the family over multiple generations, then sustainability is really important, and not making mistakes by trying things. Because I've seen it so often where you'll have, somebody, the son will take over the business, and the dad or the mom will kind of step back, and they'll see, we've just made this investment, and the ROI on the investment was awful, and we would have never done that. But the parents want to give the kids the autonomy. So what we try to do is we try to give any type of business this decision-making framework. And so the destination for them may not be to sell it. The destination for them may be to transition, the next generation into the business, while at the same time increasing the value of the business to everyone. And in that particular instance, the value may be, long-term value through, increasing their cash flow or whatever, and making it so that someday, if they ever decide to sell it, it's a very appealing business. And if they decide not to sell it, then it's going to be, because if it appeals to a buyer, it's probably a pretty good business. So let's make it into something better than a pretty good business, and let's figure out where their pain points are, and let's get rid of them. Because, it's so funny. Some of the things that cause the most angst in a business are pretty easy to stop. But it's, a lot of times it's kind of like, but we've always done it that way. Yep. And so sometimes we've always done it that way type of thing doesn't really work, in the future.
Well, let's talk about something here. That you work for Gatorden, and and for those who don't know who Gatorden is, it was a Top Gun probiotic ingredient, science-based ingredient. It really opened up the doors for all the other probiotic companies, and Mike and his team was very instrumental in breaking the ice, and really, bringing probiotics into food and beverages, and and dietary supplements. And congratulations to you and your team on that, because you guys were pioneers and visionaries back then. And but you were an ingredient brand also. You were just not a science-based ingredient. You built a brand called BC30. And I want you to think about this. What did you learn from that experience? As a president of that company, right? And that you're able to bring into other companies today that you are involved with in terms of branded ingredients and also having science. Would you structure it like the way you did, where you had another corporation come in and you license that your science to the dietary supplement market on your own brands? Right? Would you do something different again? Like, how do you approach science-based ingredients and building a brand at the same time?
I mean, we tried everything at Ganeden. And so when I got there, Ganeden was a consumer products company. We had the Digestive Advantage line of products. I was consulting, and my friend was the CFO, and I had become friendly with the CEO. They asked me to come in and just kind of take a look at the business, and they were like looking for somebody to run the consumer products business. I'm like, that's not me. I don't even really go grocery shopping. And so I'm let the person to understand that. But I said, I'm a B2B guy. At least that's where I was at that point in my career. And so we took a look at the business and said, God, you got a lot of IP around this and that. And, it seems like the hero of this company is not the consumer products, even though they were in 50,000 stores around the country. I said, the hero here is every single product that we have is all based on one ingredient. So why don't we, take that one ingredient, do all of the right things. And one of my things, one of my kind of like non-starters is let's do everything the right way 100% of the time. And so we took that ingredient and we took it through, self-grass, then FDA grass, and then infant formula grass. And then we did, because first of all, it was a spore-forming probiotic, or spore-forming organism, which at the time, the industry, the probiotic industry in general, is like, spore formers aren't even probiotics. And so we had a lot of challenges ahead of us. We also, nobody wanted to bring a spore former into food factories because, that's one of the things that food scientists teach you, how to keep spores out of food businesses. And so it wasn't exactly, but here's the good news. I was too dumb to know any better. I was coming from healthcare and then the biotech industry, and I just saw an opportunity, but I didn't know that there were, food safety, perceived food safety issues and things. And so we decided that we would start a little division of the company that we would run as a total skunk works. And so what started out as Ganeden Labs was literally 3 of us in a storage hallway in the back offices of Ganeden while they ran the consumer products business. And we got self-grass, then FDA grass, and then we started running clinical trials. We had some already, but the founder of the company was absolutely dead set against publishing studies. And I was kind of like, well, if it's not published, it doesn't exist. And so we need our studies in the public domain. So we began publishing studies, had a great team. David Keller was instrumental in making sure that we, did all the things right, and we had great regulatory advice. So we went through our grass, and then we decided we're going to take this out as a food ingredient and a supplement ingredient at the time. In 2008, we started launching food and supplement products. And then and we were starting to see some success. And in 2012, we decided the consumer product business was doing well. It was doing tens of millions of dollars in sales. We were in lots of retailers. But, we were going to need to raise, let's just call it another $25 or $30 million if we wanted to even come close to competing with the companies that were out there at the time, like Procter & Gamble with their Align product. Philips had just launched a number of products. We had Culturelle out there, and we're just kind of like, it's a heavy ask. And so we wound up selling the consumer products business to what turned out to be the Schiff roll-up, and now Reckitt Benckiser owns it, and the Digestive Advantage brand is still in the market with BC30. But very early on, we decided that, when we ultimately go to sell this business, they're not going to buy Ganeden. They're going to buy BC30. They're going to buy, the other ingredients that we had. Because, if a strategic comes along, they're not going to keep Ganeden running. And I try to explain that to so many companies. It's like, don't waste your money branding your company. Spend your money, time, and energy branding your assets, your ingredients, your technologies, and things like that. And that's exactly what we did at Ganeden. So we started, running studies, small pilot studies that would give us an indication as to, whether we're going to get, clinical effectiveness. And then we would scale them up so that we could run double-blind, placebo-controlled studies as cost-effectively as possible. And so, like I said, by the time we were done, we had 38 published peer-reviewed studies, all on the ingredient. And then we developed, over time, we developed some things like we made sure that every single contract or every single customer that we worked with had a purchase and license agreement. And so they had an agreement that allowed them to purchase the material, the ingredient, for a set price. And they also received a license to our trademark and our clinical trials and our IP so that they could put our patent numbers and things like that on their packages. Because that's where the real value was. It was in the ingredient and the support around it. And we saw some things like, some close competitors started using our clinical data to support their ingredients, which, anybody that knows the probiotic industry knows that one strain may look exactly like another strain, but unless it is genetically identical, they may do very different things. And so we actually were one of the first companies, if not the first company, to actually trademark the strain name of the ingredient. And so BC30's real name is Bacillus coagulans GBI 36086. So we trademarked that. And so what happened was if any of our competitors would reference one of our clinical trials, we could just reach out to them. And me, Stephen, I'm not a guy that sends letters from lawyers. I just pick up the phone and call somebody. I'm like, hey, good to talk to you, so-and-so, but your folks are using our clinical data to support your product. You know that that's not kosher because it's not on your product, and so I'd appreciate it if you take it down. Never did we ever have an argument about it. It was usually just a quick apology, and it would stop. And so we did a lot to make sure that our customers were protected and our partners were protected, because we didn't want somebody to, we didn't want GT Kombucha, for example, to spend all kinds of money making sure that they're the best source of BC30 in their kombucha, and then have somebody else come along and use the same science, even though they weren't using the same strain. And so we had very, very high standards. And so we made sure that every single product that we were in the market with had the efficacious dose at time of consumption. So at the last day of shelf life, if it has to be heated up, if it's like we were in a tea, if you make a cup of tea on the last day of shelf life and it's supposed to deliver 250 million CFU to the consumer in that cup of tea, we tested it to make sure that actually happened. And I'm very confident to say that we were batting 1,000 on that. And because we would spot check all of our products. We had our own lab in-house and an outside lab that would verify everything. And so I think that we established a very high level of trust with our partners. And it says a lot, considering that, we have customers that we launched in 2008, and those products are still on the shelf doing well today, with the BC30 logo on it. And now the Carey Group owns BC30, and they got they wound up as the beneficiary of the work that we did to lay all that groundwork.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great detailed explanation. And I just, I'm taking back the information where you say, it's not the company name that you put your money into as the asset. It's your ingredient. And so BC30 became a very valuable asset as you marketed that trade name, all right, BC30. Not Bacillus coagulans, but BC30. So it became a household probiotic name. Yeah. So those ingredient companies, remember the brand Ester C?
Yeah.
Yes, and how Ester C became the household vitamin C.
Absolutely. I mean, it's and it happens. Life's DHA is another one. Great branding. And so, moms that are looking for, DHA in an infant formula, which pretty much your only choice is Life's DHA, but Martech, before they were acquired by DSM, did a great job of, because people didn't know Martech, but they knew Life's DHA, and they did a beautiful job of making the ingredient the hero. Because, when you're building a business to sell it, or when you're building a business to build value, you want to make sure that the thing that is the most valuable thing that you have is that asset that can be sold into the marketplace over and over again. And we had this mantra at Ganeden, and I have this mantra today with everybody we work with, and that is, if your product or your ingredient is going into a product that your grandmother or your sister or your children are going to be taking, and that is the one and only, in this case, probiotic, and the only product they're going to take to get their probiotic is this one we're talking about, whatever it is. If you are not 100% confident that this is the product that they could use every single day and it would support their health, then we should not be working with that product. Because if the worst product we're in is not one that could be, ideally suited for, your closest family member, then why are we working with this company?
Yeah, if their passion is not there, and in that drive, or becoming the number one ingredient out there.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
In this day and age, I mean, the problem with pixie dusting and proprietary blends and all this other stuff, or mislabeling ingredients so that they can, quickly switch out one ingredient for another without having to rerun packaging. Those are always that's a red flag for me. If a company is labeling a probiotic with just a genus and species, I typically look at them like one of two things. They're ignorant and they're not malicious, or they're doing it so that they can switch that out when they find a cheaper strain of Acidophilus they can switch it out for. But, one strain of Acidophilus is not the same as another one. And so, if you're looking at, a health benefit from a particular strain, everything in the world of probiotics is strain specific, not genus and species. And so, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, is, sometimes a great organism, but that's not a strain. Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is Lactobacillus GG, and we know that there's 2,500 or more studies supporting the use of that. So if you're selling Lactobacillus rhamnosus, trying to confuse consumers into thinking it's the same as the strain used in Culturelle, you're doing a disservice, and you literally should be run out of this industry.
Yeah, well said, Michael. Well said. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive now into your personal journey. All right, but before that, I want us to break, Peter, for a quick commercial.
Sure.
But please, Michael, join us, for the next, after the commercial. I want to know a little bit more about your background, your family history. All right, I want to know how you became the Michael Bush as of today. All right,
all right.
Take it away, Peter.
Buckle up.
Perfect. Here we go.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. This KISC My Health radio show is also available on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as well as dozens of other platforms connected to the Internet. If you are interested in the world's best cranberry product line, you will want to get your products from Captain Cranman himself, Stephen Lukawski, from Planet Cranberry on planetcranberry.com. The website will be online before the end of the summer in 2026. Start your ordering and your inquiring about Planet Cranberry now by contacting Stephen on LinkedIn or by phone or text. The King of Cranberries, Stephen Lukawski, has always been your best source of products and information. So now it's time to get your products from Planet Cranberry directly. With Planet Cranberry and Stephen Lukawski, you can make your world a better place and help others do the same. Now, back to our KISC My Health radio show. Take it away, Peter.
And we are back. Peter Mingils here with Stephen Lukawski and Michael Bush on the KISC My Health radio show. Stephen, this has been fascinating learning. And I got to just share with you, I have a million comments I could probably make. But the one that I really want to make is that I love that people that are so focused on a specific niche market are people like Michael Bush and the things that he's done. Because, I'm not interested, I'm not familiar with this topic at all. And I just want to know that there's maniacs on a mission that are really going for it. So I don't have to. So I could just buy their products or take advantage of their experiences and their lessons. So this has been fascinating, and I'm looking forward to the personal part of this interview. So, Stephen, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Hey, thanks for the commercial there. That was great. Captain Cranman at work, changing the world, debunking the junk like Mike Bush has done in the probiotic space. No two strains are the same, all right, to cranberry. No cranberry is the same.
I learned so much.
Yeah, and yeah, well, it is, and I have a passion. Michael has a passion for helping businesses, and this is what we do, and it's debunking the junk out there. And there are bad actors out there, and there's great quality companies out there, and the great quality companies need to have that spotlight on them for doing the right thing, and we need to protect them too. All right, so I've always said, Michael, that when we look at ingredient companies, right? Or a company that comes out with a new product, right? And and some of these ingredient companies are not successful, or some of these companies with products are not successful. I've always said, did they launch a product to solve a problem? Was there a need for that product to begin with, or was this just another me too product or ingredient to add on on the wagon of what they're already selling? So I came across that in the cranberry space, that if you're not selling an ingredient, you're selling a solution. You are selling value added. All right, you are selling something that provides a need for someone that they are not aware of. And like with cranberry, we've always looked at UTI. And we looked at probiotics, combining it together. But now it goes beyond UTI now. So there's a need that people may not be aware of, that cranberry is beyond UTI, just like probiotics are beyond just gut health. And so my question to you before we do the deep dive of your personal journey is, how important it is for companies to be successful that they realize that they need to define a solution or a problem in the industry before they jump into it with both feet?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Me Too products. I'm kind of, there's so many companies that are like, oh, this is a huge opportunity. Let's go out and, find some contract manufacturer who can make me 2,500 bottles of, super probiotic and, whatever. And then let's sell it on Amazon because we're really good Amazon resellers. I have zero interest in those companies because they're not doing it for the right reason. They're just doing it for the reason of generating some revenue and then maybe going away, or these companies that they launch 400 SKUs of all kinds of miscellaneous Me Too products, and they want to compete on price. It's just not interesting. Those aren't the products that wind up in our house, and so and I think though that one of the issues that we have in our industry, and it's something I'd like to talk to a little bit later, is we have in not just our industry, but across the world and across the board, we have a lack of strong commercial leadership where you're not finding young people getting into sales anymore. It's very difficult to find, good sales, and marketing is a little easier, but salespeople, it's hard. And we need to make sure that we're getting people that want to do things the right way, rather than people that are looking for a quick solution. I mean, I'm tired of people that are, I can tell you how to make $1 million on Claude in 6 months by, repurposing other people's content. It's just, it's zero interest because there's no benefit to society and no benefit to mankind.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. I want to make a difference. That's what we are doing. We're visionaries. Yes, we're freedom fighters also. But at the same time, I think our life was given to us to go out there and change the world in a positive way, to make an impact, to not just to punch in, punch out, but to go out there and go that extra step, and leave our mark behind. And that's what I try to do every day. And you and I are blessed to be in the natural product industry, as and you now teaching other people and consulting with people in the corporate world, right? Given all your experience that you've had and success record is just amazing as far as I'm concerned. But Peter, when you went to that commercial that you did on Planet Cranberry, what people don't know is that the products that will be launched out there, right? And it's no different than the probiotic space. When you want to make something different and better, you have to come up with technology. You have to come up with something that allows people to realize they have a choice, that they can actually take another product that has different results. Yes, the results will be the same, but it may be more absorption or more bioavailability, more sustainability, whatever it is. But the point I'm making is that you got to have something that's different, right? Not the same. And Mike and I, you were talking the other day, just Mike, we're talking about the time release, right? We're talking about probiotics. Yeah. Not all probiotics are the same, and most of them die off right in the stomach, and they don't get past the stomach, but the same thing with the cranberry, so we're looking at time release technology that allows controlled release, a sustained release over time, and it's something that's different, right? So that's what I like about companies that come into the market that add value, that can help other companies generate revenue, because the brand's already trusted by the consumer. And that consumer is looking at, oh wow, this company's come out with something different. I should try it. And that's what I like, not the Me Too companies out there that you were talking about. And but that's what makes you special too, Mike. Is when you look at it, Mike Bush, he was raised by a family that and I want to hear all about this, because who he is today is really based upon the value system of what his parents have taught him, his grandparents. So let's talk about your journey, where you grew up to begin with.
Yeah, so like I said, buckle up. It's not it isn't the Waltons. So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and lived there until I was 5, and we wound up moving to Central Ohio when my uncle, who at the time was 16, was tragically killed in a drunk driving accident. And my grandparents had recently bought a farm in Central Ohio. And so our entire family kind of moved into that general area to help out and support them and things. my mom was a surgery nurse, so she was a operating room scrub nurse. My dad was an iron worker, but unfortunately he was severely mentally ill and spent a good bit of my childhood in and out of mental institutions. And so I remember it as if it were yesterday. I was about 8 years old, and my dad had gone into another program, and my mom had to tell me, because I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger than me. She said, because she's an OR nurse. She has to leave for work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And she said, you're going to have to get your brother ready for school, and you're going to have to, get out the door and all that kind of stuff. You're kind of going to have to be in charge of stuff, which isn't something that an 8-year-old wants to hear. And in hindsight, it's one of those things that an 8-year-old should never hear, but it was what it was. And so it was extremely challenging. I was an extremely bad student. Around that same time, I developed Tourette's syndrome and incredible anxiety and depression, and was incredibly ADHD. So I was we all in school have the odd kid. Well, that was me, because it was a small country school that I was going to, and I was the weird kid. I spent a lot of time alone, spent a lot of time just kind of thinking about stuff and doing, riding my bike, and my uncle owned a little country store, and I worked there, and was in charge of the candy counter, and was in charge of making sure that the pop bottles got put back in the appropriate cases, so that when the soda vendors would come in to pick them up, they would be all organized. And so it was challenging. And so my sophomore year in high school, the guidance counselor called my mom in and said, Michael's not a good student. We think that he should maybe go to the vocational school, and maybe he could become a welder like his father. And doing anything like my father, who has since passed, did not sound like a great idea to me or my mom. And so she withdrew me from the school at the end of my sophomore year, and I went to a Catholic school also in Central Ohio. And it changed my life. I mean, because I went in where I was a very good athlete. I was a runner, and I raced bikes, but I was a very good runner. And so when you come in into a new school as a junior in high school, even though academically I was abysmal, I was able to develop a friend group for the first time in my life and start seeing things. Ultimately, I graduated. I had a less than 2-point cumulative grade point average when I graduated from high school. And so it's shocking, but there weren't a lot of colleges that were real, hot on recruiting me. And also my family could not afford for me to go to college. And so I wound up going to a technical school, like a DeVry type of school, where I learned how to fix medical equipment, because my mom had worked in surgery forever. And so I got a 2-year degree, and the way it worked was I worked at the hospital at the time as a housekeeper, and the person that was in charge of this engineering department said, we're starting in this engineering 2-year associate's program in this local tech school. If you would be willing to become one of our first students, you could have a job in the biomed department at the hospital, doing stuff. And so I was like, I don't know what biomed is, but in the tuition for this particular school was $655 a quarter, and that included lab fees and books. So I was like, I can afford that, because my parents couldn't, but I could so I worked 7 to 3:30 at the hospital Monday through Friday, was on call for the biomed department, and then went to school to get my associate's degree in biomed. And when I graduated, I worked on medical equipment for a few years, and I wound up moving to Columbus, Ohio, and for several years worked on medical equipment until one day I was driving home from work, and I called my mother, who at the time was the head of surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, and I said, I'm not very good at this job, and I just worked on a piece of anesthesia equipment that's going to be used on a baby in the morning, and I don't feel 100% confident that it is right. I said it tested correctly, it QC'd correctly, everything's working, but like my coworkers would be like, they were the type of people that they would say, I worked on this piece of equipment and it's better than when they made it by the time I was done with it. And I never had that level of confidence. And so my mom, being the eternal optimist, despite the fact dealing with, a mentally ill husband and, 2 kids, and barely being able to get by financially, we were very, very lower middle class. She said, there's a company in Cleveland that's hiring biomedical managers. You would be good in meetings and stuff. And 3 weeks later, I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and was working for a biomedical company that outsourced biomedical services to hospitals. And so, surprisingly, no one wanted to be a manager because these are all people that really enjoyed fixing medical equipment. And so I became the de facto manager over one hospital and then ultimately over a group of hospitals. And I would be in charge of putting systems in place and managing the biomedical departments and doing all this kind of stuff. And mind you, I was 24, 25 years old, had no degree, no business acumen whatsoever. But the company was about to start working on an acquisition there was a hospital system in St. Louis that had a clinical engineering group that they wanted to sell it because it wasn't, core to what they did, but it was becoming kind of a for-profit business. And so I sent an interoffice memo, if you recall those. I mean, we're of the age where we remember the manila envelopes with the high security red string that you'd put around the 2 things, and then you'd send it in the interoffice memo. So I typed it up, printed it with my dot matrix printer, and sent it to the CEO of the company who I had only encountered once, and said, I understand that the company's about to start doing this acquisition. I would love to learn about it. I would love to help if I can. And he fundamentally said, well, so eventually, weeks later, we got together for lunch after that interoffice memo made it to him. And he said, it's a lot of work. You can't stop doing the work that you're doing now. And if you want 2 full-time jobs for the price of one, and I was being very underpaid, I don't think I was making $40,000 a year at the time, he said, we'd love to have you. And so I worked 7 to 3:30 or 4 at hospitals all around the Northeast Ohio area and down into Central Ohio. And then I would make my way to the office around 4, and I'd work till I couldn't work anymore on, things like, doing the assessment of the business, and and they taught me how to really kind of evaluate a business and evaluate the value in the business, and we wound up acquiring that business, and then we ultimately sold our company to General Electric's Medical Systems. So I worked for GE Medical Systems for a couple of years, and we had this the CEO and myself and our CFO and our COO all had this great plan that we wanted to run within GE, where we said it would be great if we would do, some of these things that GE was outsourcing. We're like, there's companies out there that we could buy and be able to insource this work. And Jeff Immelt, who at the time was the head of GE Medical Systems, said, guys, we're not going to do it. If you think it's such a great idea, go do it. And so we all resigned at the same time and started this company. And our first investor was the Cleveland Clinic Ventures, and our second investor was GE. And we wound up buying roughly 12 companies over the course of about 18 or 24 months. And we rolled them all together, and then GE bought that business. Wow. Because GE can't buy a $700,000 in revenue in business, because it costs them $5 million of due diligence on anybody, let alone a business that's breaking even at $700K.
So there you found a need. Yeah, you found a need and a solution.
and also very quickly learned what the value drivers were in businesses. And I didn't know that I was learning this at the time and didn't really understand, but it got to the point where you could practically drive into the parking lot of a business and be like, yeah, this one's worth about this, once you knew what they did. And so we did that roll up. The GE folks asked me if I wanted to stay. I said, nope, I'm not a big company guy. You know that from the last experience with me. I'm going to go do something else. And fortunately, in the Cleveland area, there was a bioinformatics company that was writing some software that had a lot to do with like the Human Genome Project, and which is another area that I knew nothing about. But I did know that their approach to the market was wrong. And so I joined that company. We helped kind of get them situated, and we sold that business about a year and a half later. I then went to another company that was kind of at an inflection point that was a medical device reseller, and then they sold services around the medical device. And we turned that company around, got them profitable, sold it for a very nice return to another medical device company. And then I took a couple of years and just did kind of consulting, working, not doing quite what I'm doing now, but really helping very early stage companies vet their technologies and helping them figure out if there's a market fit. And then, after a couple of years of that, I was working with an investment bank, helping them, kind of, handle relationships and really handle kind of the nuts and bolts of, finding the real intrinsic value in a business outside of just the, looking at a multiple of earnings. And then I got the call in 2006 or 2005, 2006 from the folks over at Ganadin. And, they wanted me to take a look at kind of a similar thing, like what can we do with this stuff we have? And ultimately wound up in that Ganadin world. And it, like I said, started out as a little bit of a consulting thing, and then immediately the two founders of the company were like, hey, this is awesome. We don't have anybody that can do a B2B business. Do you want to start it? And I said, here's my set of rules, and that I think that are fair. I need to be able to have autonomy in hiring. I want to hire a separate group of people from the consumer products business. I want to have my own team that are handpicked by me. And if you're okay with that, then I'm okay with that. And so that's how we did it. And, we wound up hiring the first couple of people that we hired. Hell, the first 3/4 of the people we hired from outside of the industry. Because, I was a non-traditional person. I got my bachelor's degree finally when I was, I think, 38. Just because I just wanted to have it. But we'd already done 6 exits by the time I got my bachelor's degree. And so, but all the while, I look at, the influence my mother had on me. My mom was one of those type of people that, despite the fact that, as a kid and as an adult, and to this day, I still struggle with anxiety, depression, Tourette's syndrome, and ADHD. She was always one of those type of people that it was an eternal optimist. And she, despite the horrible things she's gone through, she was always kind of like, she was one of those people that just said, if you're smiling, you can't be sad. And I was like, well, sure you can, And so,
just don't show it. That's something.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like sink it down and bury it deep so no one knows.
Yep.
But what she did
that's what
teach
your mom
me.
did. But your mom did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about that.
She had to do it for herself. It's her defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And so, but the one thing
I'm going to, Michael, this is for I don't mean to interrupt, but I really want to share something. I want to give a shout out to your mom, right? And hearing what she has gone through. To put love on to put love in your heart and food on the table, clothes on your back. It took a team effort at 8 years of age for you, right? But more importantly, your mom is a woman of resilience. And,
oh my God! if you think about it, she ultimately became the head of surgery, the administrative director of surgery, the Department of Surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, running a multi-billion-dollar business. And if you met my mom, it's kind of funny, and she's 83 now, and she looks like Mrs. Santa Claus. And she was the person when she went to work at the Cleveland Clinic. They have all these big mahogany offices and this beautiful corporate, office. And she's like, I'm running surgery. I need to be in surgery. And so she moved her office into a storage room in surgery and shared it with her secretary. And so, and she had, there was 10,000 people in her organization. And one of the things she taught me early on was, if you want to know what's going on in a business, get to know the housekeepers, the people that do the work, and then ultimately work your way up to, like in the case of the Cleveland Clinic, the doctors and the administrators. But if you want to know what's really going on, you gotta meet the people that are in the organization that are deeper into the organization. They really know where the bodies are buried. And so I've always taken that to heart and have always looked at every single person in every organization I've ever been in as key to the culture and literally the heartbeat of the company. Mm-hmm. And you just have to do it. And so I learned so much. I learned more about leadership from my mom than from any other person I've ever seen, because she was extremely fair and very caring, but also very firm. And so, for example, when she worked at the Cleveland Clinic, she found that in one department that they had, that there was a very high level of functional illiteracy. And so she put a literacy program in place for these employees. It was a large group of people. And she said, if you become functionally literate over this period of time, I believe it was 1 year, and the Cleveland Clinic is going to pay for you to learn, adults. You're going to learn how to, read so that you can, do the things that you need to do, which most of these people are adults. And, there are many illiterate adults who you would never know they were, because they've got common sense and they're bright and articulate. But her thing was, at the end of this year, if you cannot pass this literacy test, you will be let go. Plain and simple. And so there were a number of people who didn't make it through the program, and they were let go at the end of that period of time. And, of course, she felt bad, but she also felt like we gave them the opportunity to learn. We gave them every opportunity. We paid for it. We gave them time off, everything else. And if they chose not to do it, if they had some sort of severe learning disability where they could not learn, maybe there's a different role for them. But for this particular group of people, if they're not willing to do it, then they're not going to stay. And I really appreciate that, because she was very compassionate, but also she was like, we had a deal, and the deal was, on this day, if you can't pass this test, you've got to go. So you people have got to go. And she felt bad, but she didn't feel remorse.
Because she gave them a heads up, right? Really simple.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's what needs to be done, is accountability today, right? You need to, the young kids today, do they, for those who don't not have the accountability, all right, of their actions, this is a good way of doing it. And, so.
We're all accountable, right? We drive too fast, we get a ticket. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I think that a lot of people, these days are, they feel as though they're entitled just due to the fact that they're alive. And, there's a lot to be said about having to do the good work and be a good person.
Yeah. Well, I love your attitude, the positive attitude that your mother's inflicted on you, and to look for the good in everything. But more importantly, that having an attitude that shines out and says that, hey, I can too. Given my childhood background, given my mom's leadership and her resiliency and her positive outlook in life, all right, you build from that. And And you look at your life, right? And so the people who are listening, Michael, and maybe even for the natural products people who are coming into our industry for the first time, what advice and guidance would you want to reach out and tell them today?
Well, I'd say that for the people that are coming into the natural products industry in particular, and it's interesting. I'll use an example. Last week, I spoke and helped moderate some stuff at a food. It was kind of like, companies were pitching their companies, and they were, so there was investors there, and there was people pitching their companies. And you could tell the ones who were in it because they see an opportunity to make money, and you could tell the ones that were in it because they, one, found a market need, but also they found a group of people they felt they could help by creating product X or Y. Those were the ones that appealed to me, and they were the ones that, I think will wind up, with investments. But I think that for the people that are coming into our industry, consumers look at us. They look at the supplement industry or the medical food industry or the food industry as an industry that's looking out for the consumer. That should be the general assumption that all consumers should have. Unfortunately, it's not like that. And so, we know from being in the industry that there are a lot of supplements on the market that have just a gamish of ingredients that are trendy, and none of them are at the clinically studied level. And so what I encourage people coming into this industry is put a stake in the ground, whether it's with your employer or your suppliers or whatever, and say, we are going to do things right all the time. And back to my mantra, back at Ganeden and to my life now.
Yep.
If you wouldn't give this to the person you love the most, as if you have somebody with whatever the issue is, if you're not willing to give them the product that you make to the person you love the most for the issue they have, don't do it. Get out of the business. Go sell cakes, or be a plumber, or build a SaaS business or something. But don't get into the supplement or functional ingredient business or the functional food business if you're not willing to do it the right way.
That's great advice. And now, if you want to do it the right way and you don't know, all right, how important is for those people out there to remain teachable, open-minded?
You have to. Just recently, I actually did a post on LinkedIn because it blew my mind. I just hired a full-time associate and then interviewed a bunch of people. I had a lot of interest in this because it was kind of like, I was very clear. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to pay you a ton of money, but you're going to learn a ton. And so I hired somebody, and the first 4 minutes of the interview, although there were people that had more experience or maybe more qualifications, during the first couple minutes of the interview, he said, and this is, by the way, a 23-year-old young man who's just graduated from college, comes from a blue-collar family, and he said, I just want to make sure that I have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And I was like, you won. I mean, he had me at growth mindset because, I just kind of look at it, whether you're 16 or 86, having a growth mindset will, one, keep your brain younger, but it'll also allow you to be coachable and allow you to be able to learn things. And you also tend to have a much more accurate moral compass. And I'm always very concerned that we're hiring people with a really strong moral compass. Years ago, I was hiring for a salesperson, and I've built an assessment tool that I use and have used forever, and it just gets better over the years now that AI is involved. But that assessment tool told me this person may be using this job, and it was a position at Grenadian. They may be using this job as a stepping stone to get into, to be an entrepreneur in the supplement space. And so during my interview with the person who was very, he looked like, on paper, he looked great. And I said, so what do you want to do 5 years from now, using these insights from the assessment? And he says, well, ultimately, I'd like to start my own supplement company. And I was like, wow, the assessment nailed it, first of all. And second of all, his time frame and my time frame didn't work out. I would have loved for him to, ride with us to the end and be a great, contributor. But he was looking at it as a way to get into the supplement industry, to start his own supplement company. So I took a pass on him because I didn't want somebody whose primary goal was to do something else. I wanted somebody whose primary goal was to wake up every morning passionate about serving the consumers and the partners that were using Grenadian BC30 either for their own personal wellness or for the or to build products for consumers.
You're able to see you had foresight. You saw that, and your what do we call it? Intuition is probably right there, and I think that's what you have to have as a leader. You have to have vision, all right, to be able to see how a person fits into your vision statement and your mission statement there, and job well done on that, Peter. We're going to break for another commercial, and then I want you to step in, Peter, and ask all these questions that our listeners want to know more about Michael, all right, and what he's accomplished. He's, the importance of mentorship, the leadership skills that makes a great leader today, not just in the natural product industry, but for any corporation, all right. So Michael, it's been a pleasure, all right. I really have enjoyed our interview, all right, but it's not over. Peter, he's just dying at the bit here to talk to you, okay? All right? So, listen, my friend, all right, if I see you in Chicago, that would be great at the IFT. If not, we'll see each other, all right, through the next trade show or on LinkedIn, okay?
You got it. We certainly will. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, God bless, Michael. Take it away,
Here
Peter.
We go. We'll take a quick commercial break. Thank you, Stephen Lukawski. He's going to run away, and I'm going to come right back after this commercial break, and we'll finish this up.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. If you are interested in the world's best AI receptionist and AI business building platform, you will want to get your AI receptionist from Mingils.com. Go to the specials page on Mingils.com. That's YOUMONGUS.com/specials. Explore how small business owners and major corporations are using Humongous AI receptionists to do everything from answering incoming calls to scheduling appointments and even answering customer service questions. Your AI receptionist can do everything from making sure you never miss a call to texting reminders and follow-ups and even upgrading and closing more sales. Your AI receptionists will help you increase your productivity in just about everything. KISC My Health Radio suggests you have to check them out on the specials page on Humongous.com. That's YOUMONGUS.com/specials. You can make your world a better place and help others do the same with the AI receptionists at Humongous.com. Now, back to our KISC My Health radio show. Take it away, Peter.
We are back. Peter Mingils here with Michael Bush. We're talking about a lot of really cool stuff. Michael, just a few extra minutes with me, and then we're going to call it a radio show. I thoroughly enjoyed this radio show listening to you because I think we, meaning me and you, grew up in a similar philosophy as far as management styles. So I love the things that you said, and I may have learned them by different ways, but similar mechanisms. So I'm like your mom. You got to put your boots on the ground, go inspect what you expect, and I love your word growing. We use the word building in the term Building Fortunes Radio. I learned a long time ago there's builders and maintainers and destroyers, and that fits into your philosophy. I know. You just use different words. So the thing that I have to mention to the Building Fortunes radio listening audience and the KISC My Health radio listening audiences. There's people out there that are mentors and business builders and owners that you could work for. If you're new and you're young and you're willing to make some changes, there's some really great people that you could work with, like you, Michael, and they could learn from you, and it would be worth whether they're working as an apprentice or working, climbing that corporate ladder, and you're realizing that you're not holding people back, you're developing people every step of the way. And even if you're growing your competition, you're willing to do that long term because it's going to be helping people and making the world a better place. I really enjoyed this radio show. So for those people that are listening in, I just, find a Michael Bush that you could work with, or work with Michael Bush specifically, because they'll make a difference in your life. So I'll let you comment on that, and then I'll ask some other questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, we love it. I mean, we do, it's often that folks will come to us and they want us to help us do this or that, and we're kind of like, it's not really what we do. We like to work with people that we like and that we can relate to, but also that we believe that are coachable and that have their hearts in the right place. And so I'll announce it here first. This fall, we are launching. We're going to be opening up applications in the next 2 weeks, but we're actually going to be launching a 1-year-long cohort. We're going to try to cap it at 15 people, but it'll be a 1-year-long program where there'll be 3 in-persons. So 2 of them will be based around industry events. So we'll do it a little bit before supply side. We'll do one right before expo, so people that are already traveling will be there. And then the third one will be kind of a retreat in nature where we do kind of a graduation and a capstone project. But over the course of that year, we want to help people understand not only the business side of things, but also the mentorship side of things and leadership, and how do you build a business and grow the business without tearing your life apart, without ruining your life and your family's life and causing stress and having stress and stress-related illnesses because of it. And so we're really excited. We've got the curriculum built out for a full year. It will be so we're doing it as a cohort because I do a lot of work in cohorts through organizations like the Hoffman Foundation, the Modern Elder Academy, and others, where I found that by working with a group of people, even though they're doing different things and they have disparate businesses, by working with them, there's so many more insights that can be shared. And so we're going to have guest speakers, and we're going to be dealing with drama therapy, and I happen to be a meditation instructor, and so we'll incorporate mindfulness into the business side of things. And so we're super excited. And like I said, we're going to start taking applications for this cohort here in a couple weeks, and we'll get the announcement, and we'll make sure we share it with you. But we're really excited to be able to help shape and help develop this next generation of leaders. And so whether it's a CEO or a founder or a up-and-coming manager, or even a solo entrepreneur that wants to learn how to really do things the right way, we will be focusing on doing things the right way and being very, very focused on not only doing things the right way, but doing things that have an amazing amount of impact on not just them, but society and their families and all of their employees. And we go deep into things like when you hire an employee, how is that employee going to be affected when you sell the business? So how do you set up your equity structure so that your employees benefit and your team benefits when you sell the business? And how do you make it so that you're not hiring extra people that may not make it through integration if you sell to a strategic? And so lots and lots of stuff that we're going to be going through over the course of that year. And so, I'd invite your audience to take a look. Well, like I said, we'll have the information up soon.
Well, let's have an invitation for you to make sure you come back and explain it when it's ready. So
absolutely. Like I said,
about that.
And we'll regardless, we'll send you when the application process goes up, we'll get a link to you.
Excellent. Well, we're radio, so we like to hear. So I'll use that as an excuse to get you back.
Awesome. That'd be great.
We know how to read, but we want to hear it. So having said that,
that's awesome.
Talk to us. I don't know that much about probiotics, so I'm not going to focus questions on that. I'm really interested in you and the challenges that you might have faced and the company you're working with or companies that you're working with relative to what happened with the government's response to COVID. So what was that like? Because there's a lot of people that had to shift and move and pivot and what other verb you want to use. But COVID really was an issue for a lot of businesses. So how do you think the government handled it? I don't want you to get too political, get you in trouble. But how do you think that
Sure.
that affected your business or people that you were around, if you want to use any examples?
Well, so at the time I was on the board and was interim CEO of a kind of a turnaround, and just as one example, you had the situation with vaccine mandates. Well, we had it was a manufacturing company, so what do? And we had several people who did not want to be vaccinated, and I had to make the hard decision, which was, if you're not vaccinated, unfortunately, you cannot work here. And I sat down with the employees that were pushing against it, and I said, listen, without breaching confidentiality, I said, you have 2 coworkers that you will be working with in close proximity every day. They live with an immunocompromised parent. How would you feel if your lack of interest or belief in a vaccine caused it so that you could possibly get infected, even be asymptomatic, spread it to your coworker who takes it home to their mother, and she dies? I said, I am not going to live with that on my conscience. And so I said, so by such and such a date, everyone has to be vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, we will accept your resignation, and I'm really sorry. And I believe in people's rights to get vaccinated or not. But if they're working in an organization where it could affect other people, then it's just it's a non-starter. COVID also caused all kinds of supply chain issues, if you recall. There were companies building out manufacturing facilities, and they were supposed to have stainless steel fermentation tanks or drying equipment and things like that were supposed to be to them in 1 month, and they find out that they're not going to get it for 9 months or 12 months. So it was incredibly disruptive. But it was also a good lesson for us, as citizens and as business people, to know that we need to have contingency plans. And I've always been one to like, when you look at something that's going great, you always have to look at your business and go, okay, where are our Achilles heels? And if one thing happens in this entire supply chain or in something, where are our risk spots? Identify them and fix it. And sometimes, unfortunately, you're stuck. You have one supplier, and because there's only one person in the world that can do what you're doing. But that's rare. And so it really helped me frame contingency plans, and not only contingency plans as a, what are you going to do if your supplier can't deliver, but contingency plans like, what happens if the CEO of this company gets, long COVID and all of a sudden is unable to, work for a while? Can the business continue to run without this particular leader? And so, it helped us, really formulate the way we do business and the way we help people do business by saying, let's build systems that are not dependent on one person. And I've always had what I call I hate to say it, but it's the hit by the butt syndrome. Because you always have somebody in your company. Every company has like the person who thinks that they're, that they can keep themselves relevant and valuable by being the person that is the only person that knows something. And I made sure that in my organizations and in the organizations I work with, that there is no such thing as that. And so, we've been, and I'm a nerd, I've used technology and have for many, many years to make sure that, that there's always ways around it, to the point where, we had fully automated CRMs so that the salespeople didn't even have to fill in call logs. It was automatically done for them. And now with AI, we've got a million tools. And so there's just ways that we can make sure that, COVID taught us a lot of lessons. And one of the things it taught us is one, we need community, and two, that we need to have backup plans to our backup plans, so that just in case anything happens, and I think that, not without being political, I think that this administration has shown a lot of businesses that we have to be prepared for things like tariffs that just pop up out of nowhere that may all of a sudden make your ingredient, unpalatable to the market because you're no longer affordable. And so it's led to a lot of people moving their manufacturing to the U.S. or to Europe, or to places where their supply chains are more shored up. And so there's just so many lessons we learned.
Yeah, well, tariffs is one thing that we could have a whole conversation about, and vaccine mandates is another one. There's a whole bunch of different philosophical things that we could talk about. I mean, with the tariffs, sometimes all you got to do is just wait, because it's just a little bit like when I was with Electrolux. We would have a policy change, and everybody would go freaking out, and I'd say, hang out, don't worry about it. It's going to change in about 5 minutes. So wait until we get the same report 3 days in a row, and then we have to worry about it. The reality is kind of like dealing with it. So, but very different, very interesting. So I want to respect your time, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but you did open up the door to AI. So talk to us briefly. We could do whole radio shows on this. Talk to us about AI and how it's changing your world and the world of the industry that you're in right now. So take your topic, whether it's running a business, whether it's probiotics, whether it's whatever, your new thing with the leadership program that you're developing. How is AI changing the world?
So
and hold on a second. Playfully, I got to say, is AI going to help Elon Musk get to Mars and build a million-person capacity so he can get the biggest budget out of his SpaceX IPO, so he become a super trillionaire?
I can't comment on Elon getting to Mars, but if anything will help him, AI will certainly help. But from an AI perspective, I look at it as an amazing tool that we all need to understand. And there are things that we can do that used to be, massive manual processes. For example, when we do workshops, we request, lots of information. And so, we'll get cap tables, presentations, sales forecasts, org charts, P&Ls, balance sheets, the works. We get everything about a company. And it used to take us several weeks to go through it and kind of assess it. And, and everybody's financials are in a different condition or format, and so you'd have to kind of decipher stuff first. Well, so we've built some AI tools that now take the information that we're given from a company and it encapsulates it all into one format. And so it takes all of the information that a company gives us, and in a very short period of time, like literally hours versus weeks, it gives us the ability to look at this business and identify where, and we use it using the framework of my book, but also using the framework of, a lot of the great, science that's been done around motivation and how to compensate employees and things like that. And so we're able to go into a workshop. Like I said earlier, we know the business from a 30,000-foot perspective typically better than the management team because they're all looking at it, under a microscope. And so AI has been incredibly helpful for that. It's also allowed me to, for the cohort that we're going to be doing in the fall, it's allowed me to take so I've used these assessments and have developed assessments that I've been using for decades, and it's allowed me to take these assessments and make them into very user-friendly tools that we can share with the members of our cohort, so they can take the assessment and then they can maybe take it 6 months later and see how they've grown, and the assessment will show them, they're like, you've grown in these areas. You still have work to do in these areas. But, we've all taken Myers-Briggs and stuff like that. But it would be interesting to take it once a year, to see if you're changing. Because hopefully we're all evolving humans. I get a ton of industry news. I mean, a lot. A dozen or two emails every single day about, acquisitions or trends in the market. And I try to read them, but I finally just decided I was going to build an AI tool, and the tool goes through. So what I do is those emails go into a particular folder. The AI tool each morning at 4 a.m. runs and looks at those folders. It extracts all of that information from the emails and builds individual cards on each single item in each of those emails. And now for all of our clients and anybody that's going through our workshops or that are part of the cohort, they get access to this, massive amount of data and it's sorted by trends, and you can look at what's going on with the VC or PE market in our particular industry or in a particular industry. And so that has been incredibly helpful. And it's something that I probably would have had to hire 2 or 3 full-time employees just to do this on a daily basis. And now I just built a tool that runs for me each day. It wasn't an easy build because I'm not a coder, but it has worked out to be very beneficial especially for my clients that want to, they're like, we're getting ready to pitch some company, and they go into the trend report and look at 500 different articles and run a query on it and go, oh my God, here's the trend in GLPs or whatever the case may be. So we use AI a lot. We certainly don't have it write our copy and things for us and things like that, because we want the human voice behind it, and we want the human insights behind it. But it certainly is incredibly helpful for lots of different things. And in my case, it's been very helpful in automating the data gathering and the kind of the labor-intensive things that you do. And so we've built pretty sophisticated models that allow us to have it look at all of the information that we have, as well as everything about me and the way I think and, all that kind of stuff, so that when it comes up with a suggestion or an idea, it's very much in alignment with my guardrailing principles and kind of the ethical principles by which we live by. And it's incredibly helpful. And it's just, I'll give you an example. I work with this group called the Modern Elder Academy. It's worth looking at. But I've joined I'm starting a purpose fellowship in the fall, and there'll be a year-long fellowship I'm in to help people learn their purpose and help teach people what their purpose may be. And so, as part of that, one of the things that came up was, and here's a question for your audience, and it's like, raise your hand if you know the first names of your grandparents. And in my case, I could not raise my hand because my dad's parents died young, and I honestly don't know what my grandparents' names were. And they said, raise your hand if you know your great-grandparents' names. And very few people in this cohort of 25 people knew their great-grandparents' names. And the person facilitating it said, for those of you that are feeling real important about yourselves, remember, your family will not remember you 3 generations from now. Your family won't know who you are, what you did, what you contributed. And so I've been one who's kind of like, let's use each day wisely. And so I used AI because I'm not a nerd programmer person. And I wrote an app that's on the App Store that you put in your target age of, the end of your life, and it will literally tell you, and put a widget on your phone, it'll tell you how many days left you have to live. And so I'll look at my widget right now, and I have 11,410 days left to live if I live to 90. And that is a really good reminder that I shouldn't be screwing around. And
That's
so
perfect.
AI did that for me.
Stuff.
And so now it's an app that's out on the App Store that people can download. It's free forever. We use none of their, we share none of their data. We don't even take any of their data. But it's interesting, so that the people that are using it are kind of like, this is kind of cool. Some people think it's like remote, it's kind of like morbid, but I kind of look at it like it's always nice to know how much time you have left. It puts things in perspective.
It does. And like I said, we have similar philosophies. I've always thought about the last time. So there's always going to be a last time. So it's the last time we've spoken. And for me and you, this might be the last time we've ever spoken. That's just the reality of dealing with people. And when you become kind of conscious of the idea that this may be the last time, you kind of become more kind, more patient. I think you take things into more perspective, maybe a little bit more deeper philosophy. And it's just something that helps, I think, make the world a better place because you respect and appreciate things more.
Yeah.
So
a year ago, we lost a good friend of the industry a year ago. And she was a very, strong mentor for me. I ran into her. I didn't know what was going on in her life, but I ran into her on the street. She lives down the street from where we live. Saw each other, gave each other a big hug, petted her dog, and 2 weeks later, I got a call from her husband that she had passed away. And unbeknownst to me, she had been battling cancer, and I went to her memorial, and it was one of the saddest days of my life because it was some profoundly important person in my life, and I had no idea that the last time I saw her would be the last time I saw her. And if I would have known that she had cancer when I saw her last, it would have been a very different interaction, I think. But yeah, like you said, you just never know. And so, we need to treat everybody like it may be the last time we see them. So we might as well just love them as hard as we can.
Yep. Yeah, I've developed that. I don't know why I developed that philosophy so early on in my life, but I just recognize that, you know what? You never know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So I always kind of remember that. So having said that, this was a wonderful interview. Thank you so much. You just heard from Mike Bush. And the cool thing about you, I know already, is that there's so many other pet projects that you could talk about that we don't know about yet. So you probably have dozens of them because you've been around for a while and you're an entrepreneur and you know how to take action and accumulate. Even if you don't know, you get it done. So you do it anyway. A little analogy we call IDIA. I did it anyway. So I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to make sure we have you come back and talk about the cohort stuff and everything else. And we'll say thank you again to Stephen Lukawski as I wrap this up. You guys have been listening to the KISC, My Health Radio Show. We had Michael Bush here. We'll make sure we have plenty of stuff in the show notes. Thanks to our corporate sponsors. Thanks to our active and our passive listeners. The active listeners are the ones that share with other people. The passive listeners are the ones that just enjoy it, and they listen all the time. And thank you, Michael, for being here. Thanks for the listeners, and we really appreciate your time and attention today. And if this is the last time we've spoken, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health radio show on Building Fortunes Radio. Thanks for listening. This KISC My Health radio show is brought to you by Stephen Lukawski. Stephen is known as the Cranberry King, universally known as Captain Cranman. Stephen has over 30 years of experience working with manufacturers and marketers of dietary supplements and natural ingredients to make this world a healthier and a better place. You can check out Stephen Lukawski on LinkedIn and on the KISCMyHealth.com website. We are glad you listened in. Spread the word and check out previous KISC My Health radio episodes. Bye for now. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. Now go make the world a better place.